But let's go ahead. I told you Fred would be here. I am not a liar. The legend himself, Mr. Fred Greetham, is here. Welcome, Fred. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Hey, Steven. How you doing?
Always. I will have questions for you. They will have questions for you in the chat, I'm sure. Our wonderful producer, Ian, has pulled some of the video and audio clips from the press conferences today from the coaches and the players that were available. But as we always like to do when you first come on, we're just going to give you the floor. Fred, you were there. We weren't. What have you heard? What did you see? What do you know?
Well, obviously the forefront is Jarvis Landry's situation. He has a sprained MCL, but the key question is what grade is it? We all know that Chubb last year missed 4 games, then they had the bye, so it was a 4 or 5 week injury. But I think he had a grade 2. We don't know if it's grade 1, 2, 3, whatever. All we've got is little bits and pieces that it might not be as serious. It's week to week. Now, Stefanski likes to say day to day. So when he said week to week, that means it's probably a little bigger. But I will say this, I saw him tweet out something about make him pay if he has to wear a brace, and OBJ something about, kind of indicating he was going to play. But I think it's going to take an army to keep Landry out, and that will probably be the army of the trainers, because in his 8 years, he never missed a game due to injury.
Right.
Last year, he missed that game with COVID, and he was fit to be tied because he didn't even have COVID. He was in a hot tub with some guy, one of the players that did, and because he was close, he had to sit out that Jets game. So, I think if there's any way possible, he's going to play, but they're going to err on the caution. There's 15 games to go, so even if he were to miss 3, 4, 5 games, you still got the stretch run the majority of the season. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him out a couple, 3 weeks at least. The interesting thing will be, will they make a move on injury reserve? Now, we saw they released Davion Davis. They didn't just put him on the active roster and put Landry on IR, short-term IR. So that leads you to believe they still are maybe hoping that it's less than 3-week injury, at least now. They're probably going to give a little more time. The idea as far as OBJ, I think Brad was right all along. His source before the season said points to week 3. If he doesn't play, I almost think it would be a misdirection. Just, see, you guys, but I don't think that's how they do things. Last week they said he wasn't playing. You would almost assume that Stefanski doesn't want to go back to game time decision. So it'd be something like, yep, the plan is for him to play unless something goes wrong where by the end of the week, then he won't. But expect him to play. I think, there wasn't really much. Taki played in the game, went in questionable with a hamstring. He called him week to week with a hamstring, so he re-aggravated it in the game. Hubbard did not play. He's week to week still with the tricep. So I think the news with Jedrick Wills, he said that he's no worse for wear, meaning he didn't re-aggravate it. So we'll see if he's out there Wednesday or to what degree. But that's good news that he said that he came out just because it stiffened up. You wondered when you saw Hance go in there that he injured it further. And that was kind of the last thing you want anybody to do. You'd almost like sit out the game and be ready, for the Bears. So other than that, wasn't a lot of news. I mean, the biggest news, I think, talked to Grant Delpit. I think everybody saw a taste of what he could do and why they were excited, that what he could bring to the secondary. I didn't notice exactly when he entered the game, but I did notice right before the half when he shot through and dropped Ingram. I think they gave him a 1-yard gain, but then, of course, he had the tackle for the loss, and more importantly, he had that blitz sack. 5 tackles, pretty impressive, a forced fumble. Talked to him today. He's grateful for that. He's just grateful to be playing. And I think that can really start to open things up for everybody that's willing to jump off the 480 bridge because of this defense. I think you got to take a breath a little bit. You get Delpit out there and you get him some experience, and so you can trust him with the scheme. And JOK, as he gets more experience, and you can trust him with spying on that quarterback or whatever you're going to do. I think that, there's some optimism that the defense will start to come together. I asked Stefanski about the pass rush, and, he basically gave coach speak, we got to do better and we got to come together and we got to have the scheme. And, and that's all true, but, they got to scheme up more. And I think right now, my thought is if you can't get to the quarterback, with the 4, then you got to be a little more aggressive and do a little more of the Delpit stuff. I mean, I might have seen one time earlier, especially against a guy like Davis Mills. You can't do that against, Patrick Mahomes too often, or the veteran quarterbacks that'll pick up the blitz and burn you like Aaron Rodgers. But boy, you would have thought they'd have thrown the kitchen sink at the Mills kid because, he was nervous at the beginning, but then he had poise and led that team for that big drive coming back. I will, in looking at it a little closer, I know there's a lot of criticism about Joe Woods, but in his soft defense. But if you look back on that, I think it was 3rd and 13, short pass. Troy Hill missed a tackle. And if he'd have made that tackle, they'd have been off the field. They would not have given up that touchdown. They're still ahead 24-14. I don't think there would have been the alarm that was sounded, but that's what happens. When players make mistakes, the coach gets the blame. I think that he does have to get a little more aggressive in his approach, but I just think that's feeling out the personnel. So we'll see in the coming weeks. If Justin Fields ends up starting, I would think, as athletic as he is, I would think, though, that you would mix up your looks and do whatever you can to try to confuse the young guy and figure out a way to keep him in the pocket and not run. We've seen that in the first 2 games, both quarterbacks, primarily Tyrod Taylor, in the first half, but Mahomes in the first game, using their legs to get out of the pocket, and they're escaping the same way up through the middle and getting first downs. And both in each game, quarterback ran for a touchdown. So I think the good news is Delpit. I think he's going to be more and more ramped up into this. It was good to see Felton. For those that weren't aware, he only had 3 offensive snaps, and 2 of them he touched the ball and had 51 yards, including a 33-yard touchdown. So I think he's going to get more opportunity. And if Landry's out, he's the natural slot guy. He's not going to be a running back as long as Chubb and Hunt are healthy, because Dearness Johnson's really not playing, and Felton would be behind him. So I think he has his chance at receiver. It's good to see the tight ends. I think they combined for 11 catches, 107 yards. When you look at the wide receivers, 5 total targets. And, a little surprising. I mean, Higgins had 2, Peoples-Jones had just 1, Schwartz had just 1. You can kind of figure out why those 2 guys only had 1. But very, very low on the receiving end. But the tight ends were the primary targets. So you're going to see that all over the place. Very impressed with Baker. I've had a shoulder pop in and pop out, and to see if that's actually what happened, and he played and he actually ran with the ball and that touchdown after that. I mean, anybody that questions his competitiveness and his attitude. If anything, you might want to question, he's got to dial it back a little. In the first 2 games, he's been the lead blocker. He went down to be the pitch back, and he tried to make a tackle, on an interception return. He's got to maybe dial it back. But 19 out of 21, and one of them might not have been caught, but Anthony Schwartz should not have allowed an interception. If he's going to gator arm it, he needs to go after the defensive back and bat the ball down or something, but don't just stop and let him intercept it. That was a definite rookie mistake. But Mayfield, we talked about the underrated part of his game, running. He had 10 yards and he had the 5-yard touchdown run, and he picked up a couple other first downs on short runs, and instead of throwing it away, he picked up a little bit of yardage. So, in and out, I guess my thought on I talked about the whole off season, the offense we felt was going to be very productive this year, and they've scored 29 and 31 in 2 games. So they're averaging 30 a game in the 2 games. Last year, the defense gave up 26.2, but the offense only scored 25. And I said the whole goal is the offense is going to score. Last year, the defense gave up more points a game than the offense scored. The offense is about right where I, was thinking they'd be. If they can do 30 a game, the defense just has to get down. They're giving up 27 a game. That's more than they gave up last year for the first 2 games. And you're still, you still won one and almost won the second one. So I think that the defense will get better and increasingly go down. If they could get down to around the 20, 22 a game, they don't have to be great. They just need to be middle of the pack. I think with the additions, we expect them to be a top 10 defense right away. And they have the potential to be, but keep in mind, if they can just get to the middle of the pack and give up even 20, 22 a game, this offense will outscore them. They scored 31 yesterday, and again, they shot themselves in the foot. Peoples-Jones fumbled. They were in Texan territory for at least field goal. I mean, it was around the 37-yard line of the Texans, with a first down, close to being field goal range. And the interception that he overthrew or Schwartz didn't go for was also, they were in Texan territory. So they shot themselves in the foot both times on those drives. And I haven't really seen defenses stop them in Chiefs or Texans. They've stopped themselves. So if the offense can continue put up 30 to 35 a game, I'm confident this defense will slow things down. I think everybody's panicked because you'd expect them to swallow up and spit out Davis Mills, and they didn't. Tyrod Taylor plays that game. You wonder if they win the game. I think they would have, but, the way it was going, you wonder a little bit. So all things being said, they won by 10 points. And in the past, we would have taken an ugly win by 1 point any day. But this year, I almost felt like the Ohio State Tulsa game, they won by 21 points or something like that, but you felt like they lost. And so there you have it. That's kind of
the defense, and I think back at the beginning of what you were talking about, the fact that Grant Delpit got in only for a limited number of plays, but when he and JOK were on the field together, especially, which was only a handful of snaps, if I remember right, the two of them together showed what this defense can be once they're all out there, healthy, acclimated, learning each other, all that kind of stuff, because the difference in team speed was absolutely noticeable. Just the fact that he was out there, what it allowed Ronnie Harrison. I mean, Ronnie Harrison was playing much closer to the line of scrimmage. He made a great stop in the backfield right on the goal line just before the Texans scored their last touchdown. And John Johnson played well yesterday too. He was in his more natural position because Grant was out there to help. The more fast, strong, smart guys you have, obviously, the easier it is on the other 9 guys on the defense. Now, I did want to talk about some, and Ian's got a clip from Miles up here. The biggest thing, I think, and I said this last week, and I got taken to town for it, but I stand by it. They did enough to win on defense against Kansas City. They did I mean, you saw it last night. The difference in the 2 Chiefs games this year. Last week, the Chiefs won a game they should have lost because the Browns made 3 critical errors. Last night, the Chiefs lost a game they should have won because they made 2 critical errors. That's how the razor thin the margin is when you play the Chiefs. The Browns forced Patrick Mahomes to be perfect to beat them, and he did it. You tip your cap when a guy plays just about flawless. Last night, the Ravens made him be perfect to beat them, and he didn't. He came up 2 plays short. That's what happens with this team. So I said this yesterday, and I agree with you, Fred, that if they can average 21 points a game on defense, they're going to win 13, 14 games. But third down is the thing that's driving everyone's panic, I think. Texans were 8 out of 14. Chiefs were 9 out of 13. That's 17 out of 27 for 63%. Now, a lot of that was missed tackles, but Miles was asked about it today. Ian, go ahead and run what he said.
After Tyrod left, Mills, they were 4 for 4 on third down on one drive. What do you guys have to clean up? Looks like a few things are not working too well.
I think that first 15, it was tough. They were doing things that weren't really seeing in them before, and so that was just a combination of that. Them doing switching out their tendencies a little bit, and we just had to adjust. Once in that second half, we were able to bounce back a little bit and get off on the field, get some 3 and outs, and show up like we needed to.
Is this a matter of you guys haven't been together long enough that you really haven't?
A little bit. It's a little bit of that. D-line is pretty much new except for me and Porter, and it's tough. It's tough to get that chemistry right away. But it's inspiring when we go into the film room and we see something that we've been working on. Work clean. It just didn't get there in time. And it's he's gonna have to speed up to avoid the rush. And we know that coverage works with us and make him hold the ball, and we'll start getting there a little bit more. But it's cleaning up each and every time we play, each and every time we step on the field, on the practice field. So I'm just looking forward to it when we really click and we're starting to get it out there, guys.
Yeah, and I think the big thing as far as the pass rush goes, and let me see if you agree with me, Fred. I know we only have you for about 5 more minutes. If Miles is going to run the arc 90% of the time, if he's going to run the arc at 9 yards deep, Jadeveon Clowney can't run the same arc on the other side. That's where they've been losing the contain. Those guys are running the exact same pass rush lane, and they're losing their discipline. And so it's very easy to step up, slide left or slide right for the opposing quarterbacks. If Miles is going to run the arc, which is something he's among the best in the league at, and he can get there sometimes, then Jadeveon needs to wiggle inside. He needs to bull rush his guy right to the spot where the quarterback's going to try to step up. Now, obviously, it's easier said than done. I know I couldn't move a 320-pound offensive lineman, but I'm not getting paid to do that. But I think that and the missed tackles that you mentioned earlier have made the third down defense look far worse than it actually is. If they clean up the third down, a lot of this panic about the defense goes away, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, when Clowney comes here and McKinley and with Garrett, you just expected, a pass rush, and you're just not seeing, pressure. And, I know Laramie Tunzel, good. Chiefs had all those inexperienced guys, and you just figure, okay, you got to make an adjustment. And I think the frustration is you're feeling that Joe Woods isn't changing anything, and teams just say, okay, we shut this down.
Right.
They can't get to the quarterback. And you gotta figure. And if you have to then send Delpit or JOK or Johnson or Troy Hill or somebody on a blitz, mix it up and confuse these guys.
Right.
We know, I wrote a story last night about Joe Woods' philosophy, and he said this in training camp before the regular season, and that's why I used it. We said, what's the most important stat to you? And he said, points scored. And basically he said, the offense score one more point than the defense gives up. Obviously, that's a win. And so that's telling me in these 2 games, the Browns have been ahead the majority of the game. And he's playing, keeping them in containment to not lose the game, on the big play.
Right.
And so you're seeing Ward and Newsome, they're playing off these guys instead of press coverage up. And all the way around, you're not being that aggressive on the blitzes, I think, just because either feel like you don't know what you have on some of those young guys, or You just want to keep everything in front of you. So I do think that's part of it. They've been playing from the lead, and like yesterday when it's 24-14, they're thinking time's on our side, and they just tried to keep them in front of them instead of going right at the quarterback and making him, pay for being inexperienced. But they got to come up with something. I think a mix, a little more aggressiveness, but whatever it is, you're not seeing a pass rush. You were told Malik Jackson was a good pass rusher from inside. You assume McDowell would have some push. And then, of course, the 3 outside guys. So, three sacks in 2 games, but only 2 from your edge rushers just doesn't seem like it's that what you were expecting. Now, they could come out in one game and have 6 or 7, and it's all happy dory, but I think that's the concern, is thinking that, okay, you play a really good team and you're going to get smoked, if you play like you did against the Texans rookie quarterback. But they played against Mahomes similar and went right down to the wire. So in the NFL, it tends to be overreaction. You play a flawless game and beat them 45-0 yesterday, and everybody'd say, man, this is a Super Bowl team. And then next week you lose 10-0. You go, they stink.
Right.
What was the Packers? They got blown out last week. If they come out tonight and are back to last year's team, and we go, oh, everything's good again, and that's how this league is. It's just like you can't figure it out sometimes. Just teams swing, the pendulum swings. I wouldn't have thought at all that the Ravens, with all their guys hurt, would have had a really chance to beat the Chiefs last night. But what'd they do? They found a way to get it done.
Yeah, and that seems to be the philosophy for a lot of folks in the NFL now. You want to keep it in front of you because the rules are so different and it favors the passing game so much. If you get aggressive, we see it every week, and you make one little mistake, one step is all these guys need to go 75 yards in one play. So the thought process is, and some people can agree and some people won't, but the thought process is if you make them do a 10, 11, 12, 14 play drive, at some point, you're going to make a negative play. They're going to have a penalty. There's going to be a holding, a false start, something that gets them behind the sticks. And then you get your defense off the field, because it's hard to put together a 12, 13 play drive without making mistakes as an offense. So I get that. I understand that. But I think the key to it, what you said, Fred, just in my opinion, and I've heard Jake say this, I'll ask him about it when he comes on in the 8 o'clock hour, is exactly what you said. They got to mix it up. If Miles and Jadeveon and the Maliks are rushing the same gaps in the same manner, play after play after play after play, it makes it very easy for the opposing offense because they know what's coming. Just mix it up. We talked all offseason about the versatility on this defensive line. They can go inside, they can go outside, they can twist, they can stunt, they can do all this stuff. We've seen some, but not nearly as much as I think we all anticipated that we would see from this group. So if you can cause even a half a second, hell, a quarter of a second of indecision for an opposing quarterback, that's all it takes in the NFL. How many plays do we see every single week that are decided by an inch and a half or 2 inches? And so that's what they've got to do. And I think they will. I think a lot of it yesterday, and you hate to give excuses, but they were just flat. That wasn't them yesterday. They came out. It was a little bit of a letdown after how fired up they were in Kansas City. So I think you're right, Fred. I think we need to give them at least a couple of more weeks before we start calling for people's heads. I know you got to get out of here. Anything else that you wanted to bring up and talk about before you left us for the night, Fred?
Well, I was just going to add that on, Garrett. I mean, I think part of it is we saw him when he was really the only guy out there averaging almost a sack a game. I mean, after last year before he had COVID, 10 games, 10 sacks. Almost every year he's been out of the gate with, 5 games, he has 5 sacks, and he started making those strip sacks last year. I think he had 4 or 5 of them, and he started about second, third game. And I guess I don't think that these teams have done anything major different, and you expect a readjustment. He's been around long enough to. Now, you do see the pictures of them holding him and choking him and everything else, and if he's not getting the calls, but I don't know I think that's the frustration. You're expecting to see a little more of a dominant defensive line, and maybe your defensive backs playing a little bit better and a little more tighter instead of stepping back. So, yeah, it will be. I don't know if it'll be this week. I don't know if it'll be when it'll be, but one of these games they're gonna break loose. And it took the offense half a year to get it on, and then the second half they were playing their best. I think the defense, you're missing Walker, but now you got Delpit back. Hopefully you can keep these pieces and get this put together. I think Delpit's a big piece of it, and so I think they'll be okay as they're getting more and more. They don't have to be great. And they got
Right.
too many good players on the defense not to be better than last year's defense. I
Right.
just can't. I will not buy that by the end of the year, if all these guys are playing, that they're going to give up 26 points a game. I think it's going to slowly go down little bit by little bit, and they start taking the ball away. Then I think it's a whole new ball game.
I think you're absolutely right, Fred. The legend, Fred Greetham, everybody, has to get out of here. Thanks, as always, for joining us, Fred. We appreciate it. We will talk to you again either tomorrow or Wednesday or whenever. You're always around because we always want to know what you're here. Thanks, Fred.
All right. See you guys.
Fred Greetham's absolutely right. I think that they will 100% improve as the season goes along. We all need to slow our roll just a little bit. Not to say that we can't have questions about what's going on right now, that we can't discuss it, we can't question it. Absolutely, we should. They haven't looked like we thought that they would look on defense, at least not yet. In spurts here and there, they've made some plays, but not like what we expected. But it is far too early to hit the panic button. He mentioned, excuse me, Jarvis Landry, his injury, and there's been a lot of discussion today on social media and unsocial media about what they're going to do in the wide receiver room. Today, Davian Davis was released. I personally think they've got a lot of answers that are already on the roster, and Jamarcus Bradley on the practice squad. But one of the things that was interesting that we saw yesterday with his short area quickness, the rookie from UCLA, Demetric Felton, showed maybe he could step in to that slot role and provide a lot of that juke ability and that yak ability that Jarvis provides. And Kevin was asked about Felton's play today. Ian, you can roll that what Coach Stefanski had to say.
Hey Jarvis, how did you handle losing Jarvis so early in the game? Such a big part of what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've had to preach the next man up mentality quite a bit. And we've been trying to tell D-Felt that he needs to be, studying Jarvis's stuff quite a bit, just because when they get the ball in their hands, good things happen. Obviously, that showed today.
Kevin, this was the kind of first look we got to see of Demetric Felton on offense. He takes 133 to the house. What did you think of his game and just that play in general?
Yeah, his role will grow. He's a rookie. He's doing a nice job for us as our returner, and then we'll find opportunities for him. And I thought he obviously made an incredible individual effort on that play.
What did you think of his run?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was an amazing play. He broke some tackles, made guys miss, and I mean that's things that I always known he could do, and I'm glad he showed everybody here that he can do it.
Some interesting stuff in that clip from the three answers, not the least of which I want to point out the last one there, possibly the rarest sighting in the world. I know there's people out there that spend their lives looking for Bigfoot. They've spent their lives searching for the Loch Ness Monster. Some people are still searching for D.B. Cooper. Nick Chubb smiled on camera, guys. We've got that for you right here at the OBR. That's one of the rarest sightings in the world. And I was glad Ian pointed that out to me. And I said, we got to get that on the air because nobody will believe us if we just say it. But I did think it was interesting, as I'm sure you guys did, that Baker sort of let it slip. And I don't know if it was intentional and some gamesmanship or something, but he kind of let it slip that for a while, apparently. They've been telling Demetric Felton, learn Jarvis's stuff, learn his role, learn his responsibilities. So maybe those of us, and I was not the only one, a lot of you guys did it too yesterday. We've been wondering, hey, I wonder if he can contribute in the slot, because obviously he's not going to get a ton of running back carries toting the rock as long as 24 and 27 are healthy. So, but I think we saw yesterday, he's one of those guys, man, until he shows you that you should stop, you need to find ways to get him involved. Because the touchdown run and the other run that he had where he broke a tackle and crossed midfield was just silly. He makes the first guy miss so frequently. And I think Kevin saying, like Ty Sox just said, his role will grow. We're going to find more opportunities for him. That's for Kevin speak. that's pretty revealing. It wasn't just he did a nice job and, we're happy with his progress or anything. He specifically said that we're going to try to find ways, to get him more involved, which, Kevin is Belichick too, as far as giving out information at a press conference. But for him, that was a pretty big statement. We've got Cody. I think Cody is here. Yes, Cody Suek, our analytics nerd. He put out an article today, looking at the analytics from yesterday from the Texans game. We're going to welcome Cody in right now. Cody, thanks for joining us. Now you and Anthony Reinhardt, our other nerd, Nerd Junior, our small backup of auxiliary nerd over in the Nerd Wing. You guys put this together every week, and one of the things that you do is the 3 highest graded players from PFF, and 2 of them, maybe all 3 of them actually, but 2 of them for sure will probably surprise a lot of people. Tell us about your article and give me those 3 highest graded players and their breakdown.
Yeah, sure. So good evening first. Nice to see you again. Every week, Anthony and I will have a piece. This is the second installment, obviously, second week of football, that outlines the top 3 graded players for the Browns. It'll outline the snap counts. Anthony has a great graphic that presents week by week everybody's snap counts on the offensive and defensive side of the football. And then we also track rookie performance of guys that are in the game and play what we'll call a quote-unquote meaningful role. So if you look at the top graded players from yesterday, the first one I don't think is as surprising. I'm going to caveat this a little bit and say the top graded player, we're going to talk about him later, but there's a minimum snap count here that we have to go by, that we abide by,
Right.
so that you get a larger sample size per se. The top graded player yesterday was actually Harrison Bryant, second-year tight end out of Florida Atlantic. He hauled in 4 receptions on 4 targets for 49 yards and 117.7 passer rating when targeted. A good thing you see with Harrison is something we've seen a lot these first 2 weeks. These tight ends are kind of lining up all over the formation. He played 38.5% of his snaps from the slot, 38.5% out wide, 15.4% inline, and the remaining 7.6% were in pass blocking. A good thing with him we saw yesterday, not only did he make catches, he held onto the ball after the catch too. Something that really kind of hankered him a little bit last year, but a very nice outing by him. Second up was Malcolm Smith. Guy stepped in and was the green dot for Anthony Walker. He was the second highest graded player at a 78.7 PFF grade. He accounted for 5 solo tackles, which were tied for the team lead. And he also had 3 defensive stops, which also tied for the team lead. He allowed 5 receptions on 6 targets, but those 5 receptions only went for 49 yards. And he also had an interception and a quality passer rating against him in coverage of just 61.1. The third one is probably the most surprising for many people, just because there are 2 facets kind of for Browns fans with this guy. You have the facet that pushes for him to play every week. They want him to start. They want him in there because he's such a good guy, loves the Browns community. Then you have the other facet that wants JOK in there right now, and they just want him to play this specific role. But the third highest graded player for the Cleveland Browns yesterday was Mack Wilson with a 77.8 defensive grade. He had 2 solo tackles, 3 assists, and 1 defensive stop, as well as 1 missed tackle. He allowed just 1 reception on 2 targets for -3 yards and a 56.3 passer rating. So an encouraging outing by Mack, but I think I'm in that latter group that we just talked about. I want to see more JOK with the way they're playing defense right now, which you guys were just talking about, that it's not aggressive right now. It's cover 3, cover 4, keep everybody in front of you. Let's avoid the big play type defense right now. I'd rather have JOK in there from coverage perspective, but a nice outing yesterday from Mack Wilson.
Yeah, I think once JOK gets more acclimated and trusts himself, and the coaching staff trusts him more, and then Anthony Walker comes back from his injury, Mack, unless he starts playing lights out, and yesterday was a good outing for him, but it still wasn't a great outing or anything. It was better than he has played. I think he's back to getting fewer snaps. Now, from looking at this list here that Ian has put up, I don't think anybody's surprised that Nick Chubb is on this list. Honestly, I don't think anybody is surprised that Austin Hooper is on this list.
No.
He consistently has, a few catches, blocks well, does his job. He's not, he's not going to be George Kittle. He's not Gronk, but he's good. He's good. The tight end group is good. I thought Harrison Bryant, to the naked eye, had a very good game yesterday. So I don't think anybody is surprised that he was up there. But yeah, Mack, of course, always a surprise when he is on the top list. And a lot of people were on Malcolm Smith after week one, rightly so. He didn't play very well week one, to be perfectly honest. But yesterday he played much better. That was a hell of an interception that he had. And I think they scored 7 points or 4 points. Or 3 points on that.
2.2.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. For normal non-nerd people, they scored 3 points on that drive. Okay.
Yeah.
That out of the way. Let's get the big man himself in here. The best film breakdown guy in the city, guy that is my friend, guy whose beard game is absolutely as strong as it can get for this time of the year, Mr. Jake Burns. Thanks for joining me here, Jake-ish.
Yeah, what's happening?
We've got a bunch of questions for you. We've got all kinds of stuff. I know you put out a film breakdown article on the guy that a lot of us are excited about, and both Fred and Cody touched on. You put out a tremendous film breakdown article on the rookie, not rookie, Grant Delpit, number 22, the safety for the Browns out of LSU. So I'm just going to open it up for you right here. Just go ahead and talk. Tell us about the article. Tell us what you thought of his debut yesterday and what you see from Grant Delpit moving forward for this defense.
Yeah, a bunch of different alignments. What you liked about Grant coming out of LSU was that, excuse me, dealing with a bit of a cold, is that you can put him all over the place, right? He played like 17 snaps at free. I think he played 8 snaps or so in the box, and then a couple in the slot, and then one time he went out wide as a wide corner to cover running back in man-to-man. So the versatility stuff is great. I thought he looked really twitchy, which is also a thing you want. A guy coming off of an Achilles injury is never easy, so you want them to feel comfortable planting, driving, moving off of that foot. I did not see any hesitation. He had 3 or 4 plays where I thought he stuck his nose into contact and delivered hard hits. Also, what you want to see for a guy who hasn't played in a while and had that reputation coming out of college. Maybe not the best tackling reputation, but it was never for a fear of hitting or putting his nose into contact. So I like that from him. He got beaten coverage on the last drive the Texans had. Believe it or not, Steve, that they allowed Davis Mills to sneak out of the pocket to the right. And when he did, bumped down into coverage, he was cover 3, and Delpit was kind of covering that low hook area as he cheats down from the safety spot. As what they'll do is they'll take it from a 2 high safety to a 1 high safety, and they'll roll 1 safety back. I don't know if you can see. Whoa. I don't know if you can see my hands, but you take 1 and you roll it forward. He's the guy who came forward, and there was a deep over route right behind him, and he was trying to jump it. The pump fake got him, and then Mills was able to deliver the football behind him. That was the only real contest in coverage, so his coverage grade wasn't great, but I thought he was in the right places when he needed to be. You know, not every pass coverage scenario you're going to be challenged, right? So I didn't think he was challenged a ton. But again, he played nearly 30 snaps. He gave them the flexibility to play Ronnie Harrison in the box and as a nickel backer, which was a really fun thing to take a look at. And again, for him, he has the flexibility to play all over, and that flexibility to play all over means that he can allow them to play other players in other places. And that's a huge benefit. And again, I think he's a really good football player. He can do a little bit of everything. There was a lot of conversation about Jeremy Chin and Antoine Winfield, 2 guys I really liked in the draft. I definitely liked Grant Delpit too in that class last year. So I was not bothered to get him where they got him, which was a pick in front of Antoine Winfield. So yeah, everything you wanted to see from him as a rookie, especially a rookie not only dealing with an Achilles injury, but a significant amount of time missed with a hamstring. So all in all, really good. I posted about 8 clips in the article. You can go in, check those out. That's a free article today. I'll have up over the next 2 days for only subscribers to the OBR website. I will have all 22 scouting notes and clips from things I noticed today and all that intricate stuff about the offense and defense, personnel groupings, percentages, performances, all of that. So everything you could really want to understand what happened in the game. So check that out over the coming days. But yeah, I feel good about Grant.
And you mentioned something that we talked about all offseason because the whole 3 safety dime was such a large topic of discussion for the past 6 months. And I noticed it in real time yesterday, and I was excited to when you said that Grant would be your your first film article from this week, because I wanted to see how if I was seeing things correctly. The fact that Ronnie was able to play closer to the line of scrimmage, the fact that John was able to play a little closer to the line of scrimmage and do more things because they know that Grant is there, and the three of them together have such a widely varied skill set. They can do everything that you need to do. But Ronnie made that one play in the backfield down on the goal line. They ended up giving up a touchdown anyway, but it was still a nice play. He's better down closer to the line of scrimmage, correct? And Grant's just his presence, even while he's still ramping up and getting back from injury, simply his presence there will, in theory anyway, improve the defense up there closer, because Ronnie can play that, what would traditionally be considered another linebacker role, correct?
Yeah, I think Ronnie's a bit more physical. I think he's more comfortable playing down there. He's a guy who has some experience from his Alabama days, right? Stock and shed, that kind of stuff. I think that is definitely a role that Ronnie is more comfortable playing. I think both of them, as you know, and I'm not insinuating you said this, Steve, in any way, but both of them can play free safety, split high safety. They can do it. I think Grant's just a little bit more natural at it, and I think Ronnie's a little bit more comfortable playing down toward the line of scrimmage. And really shout out to Ronnie for the hair color, which is almost almost perfect Cleveland Browns hair. But anyway, yeah, I think that again, those two plus John Johnson give them a nice safety trio, and it's a bunch of guys that can do a bunch of different things, but also are pretty good at things that on the top of their skill set list. Like, I think Grant can play a mean single high free safety, but I also think he can come down and play slot corner. I think Ronnie can play split safety and then also come down and be a box strong safety when needed, or a dime backer, nickel backer that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Really, it would be a dime backer, but yeah, like he can handle that. And then I think John Johnson, as we know from his time before Cleveland, is an all around defensive back that can do a little bit of it all. But they got to play. They got to play better, Steve. They've got to put better efforts. 2 games in, and John Johnson's grades are nowhere near where he's been in his NFL career. So we gotta figure out what's going on between how they're playing and the approach at which they're trying to confuse quarterbacks, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit.
Quick shout out to the chat. Our friend Paul Spencer just gifted 5 subscriptions, tier 1 subscriptions. Thank you for that, and welcome to all of the folks who got their free subscription. You are now subscribers. You just increased your chances of winning stuff when we do ticket and other merchandise giveaways here. Now, talking about Grant, and specifically that sack play, Miles, who has a very Batman villain-esque look going today, which I appreciated. Very Nicholson as the Joker kind of look. Was asked about the sack play. Ian's got that clip up. He had some interesting stuff and some funny stuff to say about Grant Delpit and the sack play in particular. Go ahead, Ian.
How good was it to see Grant Delpit make his debut and then also make that big play?
That was a hell of a hit. And man, I wish we could have recovered the ball, but I'm dropping back in coverage, thinking, why the hell am I back here? I'm like, I'm gonna make a play. I'm gonna just try to get in his way. If I can get a pick, I'm gonna do it. But I see him coming off free. I'm like, this is gonna be ESPN top 10. And man, he laid a hit on him, and man, he made his presence known.
Yeah, so first of all, again, love the outfit. And no, Cody, I'm not wearing it. I can barely wear anything. I look like a dork in anything that I put on, so I don't even try to have nice clothes anymore. Second, I know you were with me. I'm not a huge fan of dropping a guy like Miles into coverage. You're going to pay him $25 million because he's one of the best pass rushers on the planet. Let him rush the passer. I understand why they do it once in a while. I get that. But talk about what you thought on that particular play just quickly before we move on.
Yeah, that's not the only time they dropped Miles. What they did was try to confuse Houston and basically make them slide protect, but they didn't really force them to slide protect. All they did was drop out both defensive ends and bring a safety to pressure from deep. So what happened is, because I was actually texting with a friend about that play, is they released the back onto a route, and then the right tackle, after Tack McKinley dropped, and Tack was on the side that Grant was on, Miles was actually on the opposite side. So Tack drops, the right tackle turns his eyes inside to help the guard and doesn't ever see Grant coming, off the edge. And it was a rush from depth, which I'm not a huge fan of rushing from depth unless you drop a lot of people into coverage, which they did, to their credit, drop a lot of people into coverage there. Yeah. So that's what happened. I mean, the back wasn't there to protect. The right tackle gets his eyes pinned down inside. Grant makes it shouldn't be undersold. I wrote that in today's article. It was a good, clean hit. You know, a lot of times rookies with a bunch of ambition to make a huge play will, lower the crown of their helmet and hit somebody and draw a penalty or hit him in the head. I don't know. Just, we've watched too much Cleveland Browns football to know that plays that make all too much sense to be made get disrupted from some silly decision. But it was just a good, clean hit, right? And it caused a fumble, and unfortunately the Browns weren't there to recover it, but that's okay. You got out of that situation, missed field goal. Yeah, people have kind of made a big deal out of Miles saying, well, he doesn't like the scheme. Well, I know not one single pass rusher likes to drop into coverage. They'll never say, hey man, that was a really fun drop into that fire zone we did right there. Just loved it. They're never going to say that. They make their money off of sacking the quarterback, so they're never going to be happy about it. So, it's like, don't read into that comment all too much. I don't want to drop Miles out into coverage 5 times a game, but a couple times, if you think you have a really predictable situation, like, hey man, it's 3rd and 4 and they love to run this backside crosser, and if we drop this defensive end from the front side, we have a chance to cut underneath that thing. So yeah, I'm not all too against that, but again, don't do it 10 times a game, because that's not what Miles is paid, $95 or whatever $1 million a contract length is. I don't even know the specific number. Someone can yell at me, but he's paid a lot of money, and he's not paid a lot of money to drop into coverage. But for we're complaining, or Miles is complaining a little, but they made a great play. They need more of that. I don't care who gets the sack. I don't care if it's I don't care if it's Baker. They sub Baker in it outside. Who cares? Just, you got to find ways to get home to the quarterback and confuse them. And that's what I talk about so much is right now, offensive coordinators and quarterbacks, they're not confused by what the Browns are doing. Everything they want to do is there. And when they do get kind of confused or kind of have to come off of a look, they're able to escape the pocket quite easily. So yeah, they need to get guys to hang on to the rock in the pocket. That's how they're going to make plays, because we talk all the time about the coverage is better, the personnel's better, it should hold up longer. Well, yeah, it should. But if you're covering grass and you're not covering people, and there's no deception into how you're playing your coverage, you're never going to be able to stop quarterbacks from A, getting the ball where it's supposed to go, and B, from OCs dialing it up right to the perfect spot, right? Like, that's just the nature of the business. You got to confuse people. You got to get the OC to call the wrong play. Got to get the quarterback to have his eyes in the wrong spot every now and again. If you don't, I mean, it's as easy as it's a rhythm thing. 1, 2, 3, ball out. You're never going to get pressure. And again, when you're just worried about trying to get home all the time, maybe sometimes you aren't really calculated about your move approach. And we've talked about these guys on the Browns at the edge positions are just running the arc almost every time. It feels like, I would bet it's over 80%, Steve, where they're running the arc. They're afraid to win inside. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. They're going outside right now, causing upfield and lateral movement, and you would think that your defensive tackles would be in a better position to help out with that, but they're not disengaging enough. So then the quarterback's able to slide out and either run or make a throw on the run, putting stress on zone coverage. So, okay, you spin inside, then he wins on the outside, right? A quarterback can duck outside. So I don't know. It's like having the yips right now a little bit for your pass rush, where you just don't feel like you can do anything right. 2 sacks through 2 games that's not where we thought they would be at this point. We definitely thought that the way those two are practicing in the preseason, that we would see better production from them right off the bat, especially those two. And we know what we've seen from Malik McDowell, right? Like, again, not to take anything from Malik, I think he's got 3 pressures on the year, and he's leading the team in Pro Football Focus overall grade. So, Malik Jackson too, I thought they had a solid week 1, but they just have to convert. They have to convert these pressures into disruptive plays. They're not getting enough of that right now.
I said something about Anthony Schwartz. If you want to talk about his play yesterday, especially that one where he got open deep, or just the offense in general, at this point, we got a few more questions that we'll get to, but at this point, I just want to open it up to you. Tell us what you thought yesterday from an analytical point of view. I think we all know what we all thought from a fan point of view. We weren't happy with. We thought they should have beaten this team by more. We thought they should have gone out and not been as choppy, been a little more efficient. They didn't look like themselves yesterday. I've been attributing it to they were just flat. It was just a flat game. But from an analytical perspective, from an analysis, not a fan perspective, what did you think of yesterday?
that they're still being pretty generic on both sides of the football for the most part. I definitely think that they're trying to keep both their running backs fresh. It does seem like when they play extremely talented opponents like Kansas City games, they know they have to play their best. Nick is going to have a few more carries than Kareem, maybe in that 65-35 range. But yesterday, I think Kareem out-carried Nick, or they were right there, same. I think they're trying to balance those guys out. I thought, although they did a little flea flicker wise screen and they did sprinkle in a reverse, I didn't see a ton of creative play action stuff. Very generic boots, very generic play action that Baker got sacked on a couple times. I didn't see a ton of creativity there. So I think that a little bit of what their process was, if we just show up and play solid football, we can win this game. And there's no real reason to put a ton of things on the docket for teams to scout. We want to keep some things in our back pocket. It's kind of lame to say sometimes. I'm not saying the Browns didn't go out there and aggressively try to win,
Right.
but I just don't think that they had the creative juices flowing like crazy. Defensively, it remains a flummoxing situation for me. Like, I don't have a problem with the general cover three, the quarters and cover three that they run. I don't have a problem with some of the man-to-man that they sprinkle in every now and again, but they do have a very passive nature about them, Steve. I talked to John Costco at Pro Football Focus. He let me know that they are, let me make sure I quote him correctly here, they have the 5th lowest blitz rate in the NFL right now, which is what we feel like is carried over from who he was last year, and the 13th, but they are 13th most in safety rotation. That means pre-snap going from close to open or open to close. Since they play cover 3, that is not surprising to me, but I did not get an answer from John. I should have asked him about like truly disguising. Like, I don't think they're really trying to disguise, like going to the extreme. The Chiefs go to the extreme sometimes to disguise. Now, they're not the best defensive example in the book right now, but you should do more of that. So what I see defensively is like I feel like they're playing a passive brand of football, and that doesn't mean it needs to be man or zone, or I'm not complaining about that split, but I just feel like they're catching everything that the offense is throwing at them. They're not the aggressors in any scenario. Like, they're not attacking concepts they think are coming at them, playing forward, getting their hands on people. You know, you go out and spend draft capital on Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams. You go sign John Johnson. You go out and trade for Ronnie Harrison. You aggressively take Grant Delpit in the 2nd round. Like, trust these guys to challenge some people. And I'm not saying, again, you don't have to play cover 0, blitz 6 and 7 guys and play no help over the top. But what I'm saying is, I think that I'm not in the like, let's fire Steve Wilks. I'm not doing, or sorry, Steve Wilks. Let's not fire Joe Woods. Like, I'm not trying to do that.
Steve Wilks, to be honest, I really don't care.
I do that way more often than I should. But with Joe Woods, like, I'm not saying what his principal scheme stuff is doing or his general philosophy is wrong. But what I'm kind of getting at is the attitude at which that they play, that they approach defense is too passive for me. It's almost like they have gone to this, like, our guys understand, hey, we're eliminating big, right, Steve? Like, they understand we're eliminating big plays.
Right.
We're not going to let you take anything up the sidelines. We're going to eliminate deep post shots. And now they are playing this brand of football that is passive all the time. Like, all the time. It's reactionary football. They're not playing as the aggressors. They're reacting. And I know you do have to react on defense. I get that. But sometimes you have to take things to the offense, I think.
Right.
And I'm okay. Like, if they change their defensive aggression to get up in people's faces and challenge offenses and take away some things they're comfortable with, I don't care if they get beat over the top for a touchdown. I couldn't tell you, just sitting here, I couldn't really tell you the last time I remember a Browns player in the last 2 years, this year, last year, really getting beat over the top for like a 65, 70-yard touchdown. I don't know if you can, Steve, just sitting here thinking on it real quick. And somebody in the comments maybe does. And that's great. That's cool. Like, I love that they eliminate big plays. That is clearly a huge theory of what they do. But at some point, you have better Jimmys and Joes than the other guys. Right. And when are you going to believe in them to go up and get aggressive and challenge people and make life uncomfortable for offenses? Because what I've noticed is the 2 quarterbacks they've played, and even Davis Mills to an extent got really comfortable, and the 2 OCs they have faced have had no clue and understanding what they're going to do. Yeah, John Johnson's play was a bust, though. That play was covered. That was just
Yeah,
like
he
a
wasn't
bust.
beat over the top
Yeah,
on that one. I was going to say that.
That's a good answer. That is a long play. It's a 75-yard touchdown. You're right. By nature, it is. But I didn't see I'm talking about you're up in press and somebody runs by you. Like they're running think of Donovan Peoples-Jones' long touchdown last year, right? Like in Tennessee. So all I'm saying is I would be okay with that every now and again if they would get more aggressive. And I think sometimes your guys react to the style at which you coach and teach them. You're teaching them to eliminate big plays. You're teaching them to funnel things. Well, okay, then we're all just going to react in this manner in which, okay, if we just stand in our area, if we guard our grass, it'll work out, right? Like it'll work out and we'll stop them for 8 yards and maybe we'll get a third down stop. Nobody is being aggressive about making the actual play that stops somebody. They think it's the guy next to them that's going to make the play. Nah, man, you got to make the play. You got to stop dropping into grass and seek out that crosser. You have to be able to knock a ball down on the sideline on a comeback route. You have to be the guy who shoots a gap on 3rd and 2 and makes a TFL. Like that stuff, to me, their general aura is passive. And again, I'm not saying I hate it. I think scheme-wise, the Browns have a solid scheme in place. But what you're doing is you're giving your guys this passive mentality. And even that interception you're seeing on the screen in front of you, that was just a piss poor throw. It wasn't like if that ball's put out, if that's a catch in the 20-yard gain. That's just a piss poor throw. And again, that's a little bit, right, of what his philosophy is. Make those throws all the time and do it for 10 plays and 12.
Right.
I get his general philosophy, but I think they need a defensive mind shift. Like, hey, we got Miles F. and Garrett. We got Jadeveon Clowney. We got Malik Jackson. We got dudes. We got Denzel, John, Greedy. And man, I'm really impressed with Greg Newsome. I know he had an interference there, but that dude has got some freaking oily hips, dude. He is a dude. He's going to be a dude for a while in Cleveland. We got Grant Delpit. We got Ronnie. You guys got guys. It's not the Anderson Dejos and Carl Josephs of the world, the Terrence Mitchells of the world. You got guys. And what you need to do is pump these SOBs up and make sure they know that they're guys, right? Like we shouldn't be taking what the offense is giving us. We should be making the offense uncomfortable. And if we're not making them uncomfortable, then what the hell are we doing, Steve? Why did we spend all this money here? We need to take it to the offense and stop being the other way around, because if you don't, you're going to continue to have these games where you play down to your competition, right? Like if you play bend but don't break, go out there to not lose the football game instead of playing to win, you're going to play the Texans 31-21. You're going to play the Bears 21-17. That's the thing. So make a choice, right? Do you believe in yourself, and do you believe you guys can do this, or are we just going to continue to just sort of show up and bank on the other team making mistakes, or are we going to be the reason that they make mistakes? That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and there's a question in here from Johnny Brown 19 about 3rd and long, and we saw an example of it just a minute or two ago here. If you're going to do that, and like you said, there are, especially against certain offenses, I'm not saying the Texans are one of them, but it's against the Chiefs and other offenses, make them put together 10, 12, 14 plays, because at some point you hope they're going to make a mistake rather than try to give it up. I get that. I agree with it in certain situations. I don't, but I understand the general thought process. But if you're going to keep everything in front of you, if the thought process is we're going to keep it in front of us, make them throw it short, and then rally up and stop them short of the sticks, you better make the freaking tackle. And yesterday, a bugaboo that has plagued them for years came back on at least 2 or 3 3rd and longs. They had the guys boxed in, stopped 3-4 yards short, and just missed tackles. We just saw it, and that extends drives. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, they're the worst team in the league. They're giving up 63% of 3rd downs in the first 2 games. Now, hopefully that turns around. It's only 2 games, but a lot of that is part of the passive stuff that you're saying, but a lot of it also, and I remember 2 or 3 from the Kansas City game, you're there. You're in position to make a play, 3 yards short of the sticks, break down, wrap up, make the tackle, get your defense off the field. Don't go for the big Sports Center highlight hit, okay? Go up there and bring the guy to the ground. That's more exciting to me, getting off the field on 3rd ground, than having you lay the wood to some guy, especially these days when they can throw a flag on anything. Am I wrong that yesterday the tackling slipped from where it was at Kansas City?
Yeah, I definitely think it wasn't as good. I haven't seen the exact missed tackle splits, but There were certainly times where people were just bouncing off folks, and you don't want that. You need to, especially if you're going to play a passive defensive approach, wherever they catch the rock, you better get them down right where they end up having it, right? Because if not, it's like a double whammy. You can't really afford to let that happen. And that's definitely a big part of things. If you can't tackle, then that's going to be an issue. And like we said earlier, man, if they're going to play this passive brand of football, be prepared to pull your hair out, because it's a frustrating thing to watch. And to me, I feel like you could play a passive brand of football and pay a ton of people a lot less money or spend a lot less draft picks on defense. So I don't want to call it I'm not trying to blame Joe Woods for everything,
Right.
but I definitely feel like there's a cultural issue with the defense right now. I totally understand, Steve, last year. I really do. We talked about it for 6 months. You didn't have the guys to do it.
Right.
That doesn't miss me. Kevin Johnson, not getting it done. Terrence Mitchell, average, but not getting it done to the high level you could go out and trust him to walk down in someone's face. You obviously have Sendejo and Carl Joseph and a Ronnie Harrison who's dealing with all these injuries and is in and out of the lineup, and Sheldrick Redwine. Think about the names I just dropped. They've improved everywhere, and they're not getting the performances from these guys that they improved everywhere. So eventually, if a guy's really good, you went out and signed a guy and he was damn good for 4 years somewhere else, and he's terrible with you, it's probably time to look in the mirror. It's like, okay, it's not him, it's me. What am I doing wrong? What are we doing wrong, right? That has to be a question that is being asked right now, and hopefully they come out to prepare this week pissed off, right? Like, that should be the hope, is that they come from, not just the players are pissed off, but the coaches are pissed off about how do we get this thing right? Because that game Sunday was embarrassing. And I don't think, people wrote some headlines about if Tyrod Taylor doesn't go out, whatever. I don't think that's false, because the way the first half was a dissection. And we know who Tyrod Taylor is. We watched it. He is the epitome of a league average NFL quarterback. No better, but he can be worse sometimes, but he's no better than league average, even when he's dealing. So I use the word concern, Steve. I don't use the word panic. I am not panicking. If we're having this conversation after who's week 10, if we're having this conversation after New England week 10, then that's when I get to panic levels, because they have plenty of time. The excuse is so easy, right? The excuse to me is super simple. They got a bunch of dudes who are new. They want to make sure they're all on the same page, and they don't want any busted coverages or miscommunications, and we're being generic because of that. I would have less issue with that if they didn't do the exact same thing last year, which is also explainable because of personnel. But now we're 2 weeks into this thing. If you include the preseason and the first 2 weeks of the season, we're 5 collective weeks into this, 6 if you include the off week of preparation in between the preseason and the regular season. You got no excuses to keep playing football this way. You improve your personnel so much. There's no denying it. They have better football players across the board. Use them, man. If you aren't going to use them, then what are we doing? Like, what were you excited about? The video where you're so pumped up about getting JOK in the draft. What are you excited about? What are you doing with him that's unique, right? What are you doing? You're pumped to get John Johnson. What are you doing with John Johnson to unleash hell on people? The same could be asked for several other players. Greedy Williams didn't even play a snap. So I'm just I'm concerned, Steve. I'm not panicking about it. I need to see a way bigger sample size. But as we sit here right now, I just have and I said it earlier, general issues with the approach, the methodology, to how they are affecting the mindset of these defenders in Cleveland. Because I think the passive stuff, while great in theory, has lent itself to a bunch of dudes who are aggressive guys, playmaking guys, to play passive football. And that is not what you want. And especially when you watch all these other teams across the league who can play aggressive and they're not afraid. Because ultimately, Steve, if you play this defense and it's bend but don't break up, we're not going to play a ton of man. Doesn't that feel like your coach doesn't trust you? Like, hey man, I can walk up to Tyreek Hill and I can cover that SOB. Let me do it. We watched John Harbaugh say to Lamar Jackson on Sunday Night Football. Do you want to go for it on 4th down? Well, hell yeah, I want to go for it. Hey, Denzel, do you think you can cover Tyreek Hill one-on-one? Hell yeah, I do. Okay, then we're going to give you about 70% of opportunities to do that. Follow that SOB around the field. Hey, 33, do you think you can handle Travis Kelce? Yeah, okay, we're going to follow you, and we're going to get bracket help from our strong safety on about 65% of those plays. That's the stuff I need to see, man. Like, trust and believe your guys can handle these, because if you don't think he's able to cover Travis Kelce, how the hell's he going to think that? So that's the stuff to me. It's not, I say it all the time. It's not what you know as coaches. It never is. You could be the greatest magician with a whiteboard and a marker in the world. You could draw up an answer to every single pass concept. You could draw up a blitz scheme for it. It's what do your players know? What do your players know? Because that's what matters, right? If you can't get the stuff you know in your brain into your players' actual performance, then you're not a good coach. That's a problem. So I'm going to give Joe Woods more time. I think the general scheme is fine. It's the stuff, the approach, the attitude, the planning inside of it that I think is flawed right now. So I do want to see that change, and hopefully they get off on the right foot. I'm going on a tangent, man. I'm sorry, but like, I've watched all this tape, all 22 today. I've watched the Chiefs. It's just it's a philosophy thing to me. Like, I don't think he's putting confidence into his guys, and I don't think his guys are going out there with an aggressive nature. And that's where I'm at, man. So